Ladies and gentlemen on YouTube, welcome to Watch Me Drive, where I talk and you listen. And tonight we're going to talk about the dangers of radical progressives and why Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez could be the most dangerous politician in America. I am appalled by the ignorance of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her new women's club of radical progressive politicians who are threatening to undermine the economic integrity of this nation. Ladies and gentlemen, this Green New Deal is perhaps one of the most laughable, absurd documents put forth as a genuine proposal, and it should be laughed at, and it should be made fun of, and it should be categorically dismissed as nothing more than a ridiculous fantasy of a pipe dream that only inspires the most young, delusionally minded idealists. Ladies and gentlemen, to call this inspiring and fresh face is an insult to everything reasonable. Yes, our politics in this country needs an injection of new energy. It needs more young people participating, but this is not what we need. We don't need grotesquely ignorant politicians who virtue signal on the most reductive token issues and cultivate a support base of economically disenfranchised, politically ignorant people who will vote the party line based on one or two token issues. This is absolutely ridiculous, guys. The Green New Deal, the premise that our country needs some sweeping nationalization of industry because our climate is at the breaking point. This climate alarmist propaganda has been going on since the year 2000 and before. It started with Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth. And ladies and gentlemen, to have skepticism with regard to this climate narrative does not make you a climate denier or a science denier. You don't let that grandstanding nonsense dissuade you from the reasonable skepticism you have the right to have. So ladies and gentlemen, embrace it. And the real science is conclusive. It has a consensus that yes, humanity is responsible for climate change. Perhaps a large portion of a rapid warming that is happening too fast in a way that is outside the normal cycle of climate patterns. We can acknowledge all of this, but we don't have to acknowledge the latest propaganda. Do you remember the Inconvenient Truth? Remember watching it and how authoritative the statements were in the predictions? And they never came true. Here's the problem, is a genuine scientific pursuit gets hijacked by partisan nonsense and propaganda. So the legitimate science of climate change is being hijacked for political reasons. Science needs funding. If you create an issue, you'll have more interest, you'll have more money flowing in. So yes, I don't completely trust the scientific community because I see the incentive to scare people. I see the incentive to say we need more funding for studies because after all, if you're a scientist and that is your livelihood and you depend on funding to do your work, then why not? And I'm not condemning all scientists. I'm not conjuring up a conspiracy theory to say that scientists are collectively colluding to lie and get funding. I'm saying that this collective motivation, conscious or subconscious, will result in a skewering of the mean objectivity of the scientist. And I think that's a valid criticism to have. But we cannot, ladies and gentlemen, completely uproot our entire economy based on a New Deal put forth by someone who's younger than I am. I'm 31 years old. This young lady is still in her 20s. She was a bartender a year and a half ago. Everyone's like, oh, you shouldn't attack her for being a bartender. You know what? I have nothing against bartenders. I think they're great people. But I would like to see someone who at least has some experience in an industry that might apply to what they're going to be doing in government. Because I can hear the critics saying, well, Donald Trump wasn't a politician, and you'd be correct. But Donald Trump ran a business. And a lot of running a business and that experience at the level he was at can be applied to politics. So don't give me that nonsense. With Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, we are dealing with a personality akin to a political hooker. We're dealing with someone who has been indoctrinated by a certain political ideology since her formative years and has been living in an isolated community of opinion and mentality and is now regurgitating the narrative skillfully. Remember, she's not dumb. She's politically ignorant. But what she lacks in the ability to reason logically, she makes up for in her ability to finesse the people. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was a bartender. The bartender is the cool person who serves you drinks and listens to you talk about your problems. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a people person. And a people person is what we need in politics regardless of your party. How many P's can we get in there, folks? So Cortez is able to say the most grotesquely ignorant things, cultivate a base of mindless supporters, and then get a free pass in the media because the media wants to capitalize on this viral interest. They want the clicks and they want the views. And that is the danger, ladies and gentlemen, is the media is so desperate for the views that they are allowing this radical left-wing progressive nonsense to hijack the narrative. And for every person endowed with skepticism, there is one sheep who will follow along like a horse with blinders on. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what I'm afraid of, because the ideology inside of this new progressive party is absolutely disgusting. We're seeing a systematic attack on American values, be it on a society level, a cultural level, and a political level. You're seeing these young progressives being in favor of socialism, other forms of government, and very disenfranchised with the entire American structure. Most popular of these philosophies is socialism, because of the political and philosophical ideologies rooted in collectivism. Socialism is the most palatable for the young American generation. Nazism or nationalism or fascism, for example, leave a bad taste in our mouths due to our understanding of history and our focus on Nazi Germany. But Americans are largely ignorant, unfortunately, this latest generation, to the evils of things like communism and socialism. And they see democratic socialism as some sort of ethical construct to implement this enlightened ideology, which is socialism and collectivism. But ladies and gentlemen, there is one fact, or shall I say axiom, of socialism that applies. Socialism necessitates dictatorship of some type or another. Now, that dictatorship can be a theocracy, it can be a brutal dictator, or it can be dictatorship through majority opinion, and that is democracy. Democracy is not freedom, ladies and gentlemen, and that is the lie you've been sold, is the lie that if we could just all agree, then we could govern ourselves. That is not possible. We will never reach 100% consensus, and there will be times where a very large minority will vehemently disagree, and they will deserve and require representation. And if you allow the majority to have sweeping jurisdiction, you have nothing more than a dictatorship through majority. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is democratic socialism. That is the fundamental evil that we're dealing with, is that this is just rebranded collectivist nonsense that is being built up on a house of cards, and it will fail because socialism fails every time. And that's not right-wing conspiracy propaganda, ladies and gentlemen. We can hash this out. If you'd like to go live with me and have a live debate, if you have some social justice warrior professor who's told you that Karl Marx is a misunderstood, brilliant character and Ayn Rand was the worst philosopher ever, we need to have a discussion, because I need to reach you. I need to reach into your mind and say, you have the ability to think independently. You can form your own opinions, and you matter. And this collectivist nonsense is the corrosive force that is eating away at your brain cells. You need to embrace individuality, and then you need to study economics. You need to study value and how value is created and transferred in currency and the evolution of money, and get the knowledge going, because if you don't, you can fall for anything. And these radical progressives, ladies and gentlemen, they are dangerous because along with this horrible economic plan of the Green New Deal, they are deeply racist and they are fear-mongering. They remind me a lot of Adolf Hitler. They remind me a lot of Adolf Hitler because they have two things in common with Adolf Hitler. Hitler expanded the size of the national government and inspired fear within the people and put them up on a pedestal. He said to the German people, you are better than everyone else because of ABC. You need to be afraid of these enemies, communists and Jews, and let's expand the size of the government. Okay? Now, why does Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have anything in common with that? Okay? She wants to fearmonger on a climate issue to necessitate an expanse of the size of the federal government while fearmongering on a social issue and manifesting an enemy. That enemy is the cisgender white male. This notion of intersectionality inside of this new movement and this attack of whoever is at the top of their little intersectional construct, they have a universal hatred and prejudice toward one demographic, just like the Nazis, ladies and gentlemen, just like the Nazis. And if you read through the comments on these radical left-wing pages, you will see the vehement hatred toward that one demographic, that ability to turn the other cheek against evil when it comes to that one demographic. People who say that this demographic, the white male, has it coming, that they think that I'm a single white guy. You know, big surprise, right? That we have it coming, that we deserve to suffer, that we've had all the privilege for way too long, and our time is up. And ladies and gentlemen, that's not fair, man. That's not fair because you're holding an entire collective, you're holding a bunch of individuals responsible for the acts of others. And you're treating them as a collective. And that is the fundamental evil of collectivism, ladies and gentlemen. Is they treat everything like a group. They are against individuality and individualism. So just because I'm a white male, I bear some sort of responsibility, regardless of my unique experience, regardless of who I am as an individual. I'm told to bear some sort of responsibility. This is corrosive. Because who's going to be the next enemy? Ladies and gentlemen, we need to remember that the United States of America is a democratic republic. It respects the principles of capitalism and individualism. And because of this, it produced the most powerful and prosperous nation on earth. And there are certain values that are unique to the United States of America that need to be protected and defended and shouldn't be lost. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I have